I'm still going. There was one case in good old San Jose. A woman had seen something over her house. It was a big disc. And I say, how big was it? And she says, well, it was about the same size as her house. It was, just like that. And I say, well, when you went inside, you said, there was this being, and the being took you on a staircase. I say, where did the staircase go? Well, the staircase went up the side of this big round room. I say, how would you compare it to? It's, well, like a movie house, like an amphitheater. I said, that's bigger than your house. Why is the inside bigger than the outside?
Like if it exists outside of 4D, time, space, or whatever. Say this is, you have a 2D universe and this is a 3D object. If it intersects, you're just going to see a sliver of it. So you'll just see a disc.
Yes.
Edwin Abbott wrote about a 3D society interacting with a 2D plane in his late 19th century classic, Flatland. On Earth, we have the ability to move above and below sea level, east-west, and north-south. So we have 3 degrees of motion, or axes on which we can move. Say you're a fly in a box. You can move up and down, forwards and backwards, and right and left. But say that box is part of a larger hypercube, and the box part is the only part of the hypercube intersecting with our 3D plane. The hypercube would obviously be much bigger on the inside than what's represented on the outside intersecting with our visible reality.
There's a multidimensional reality, and whatever it is that is driving these objects sits somewhere else. And it's basically something that it pokes into our reality, and it's moving it from elsewhere. It's made to look like it's moving here, but it has no functionality here. The functionality doesn't reside in our side of the veil. The functionality is elsewhere. So, we might get one of these objects. Let's say there's a crashed craft or beings or whatever, and they are no more real than a sculpted object, right? They don't have the function here. The function is driven from elsewhere.
Okay, let me see if I get this analogy. So there's this flatland, which I'm sure you've heard of, and so if you're a 3D, just for the people wondering what the heck that is if we're at least ostensibly 3D, and then if you look at your paper, if you were to touch your paper and there was an ant on your paper that could only see what's on the paper, then all of a sudden it would just see your fingernail and wonder what the heck is happening, and you can remove it and it would just be gone and violate their laws of physics. So the purpose would be like, imagine if I placed this cup down on the piece of paper. The cup is actually for water, for me to drink.
Right.
But these people see the bottom sliver of a plastic, and they're wondering, well, what the heck is the purpose of this? Well, that's actually not the purpose of it. It would be unreasonable for them to come up with the purpose.
Right. Well, and if you were to now move it through their flatland, left and right, they would see nor even if they were to look at the object where it is, right, the pieces of plastic that are interfacing in their 2D, they would see no visible means of propulsion. The propulsion is your hand, moving it left, right, and center. So imagine that this is what's going on here, that there's something else that's it's the motility, the functionality is sitting elsewhere. And then what is here is just, like I said, like a projection, which is being held at arm's length.
And the purpose, because even looking at this, which is a light,
right?
If at the bottom there's just a base that's black, and they would have a hard time coming up with the purpose of that based on the base.
So I think we have to be prepared for some disappointments in a way, because if what I just said is true, we might get a hold of some of these things and never figure out how they work, because the engine is not here, the driving force is not here, and so but it is still a puppet which is used to interact with, or in Jacques' sense of the term, is the control feature, the control function, the control system.
Well buffered from that.
And would you think the idea of time travel rather than extensive travel in space would also subscribe to that some of the movements that these craft have that appear particularly glitchy Alex Dietrich and David Fravor reported the Tic Tac was actually tumbling above the water, which is a really odd movement for something to make when it should just be sitting still. And what we hear about, do you think it could be that these things aren't moving really fast or popping in and out of existence in a space?
Yeah, I do. I think this time travel aspect of it helps explain a lot of those things where something appears to sort of be fading in and out of existence. Even that's commonly reported in these close encounters. And if there's a sphere of influence around it, if they're manipulating the space-time metric within the vicinity of these craft within a certain radius, you would expect to see things like that. If they're coming in and out of our time periods too, we would expect to see them appearing and disappearing, just like they're so commonly reported doing. Another thing that gets mentioned that kind of ties into that, and I see this as a criticism of this idea a lot, where people think that if you travel through time, say you go 100 years into the past, now the Earth is in a different place and you have to travel really far to get to it. But that's sort of a faulty way of thinking of space-time, because you're separating time from space. You're saying that if you go through time in this way, the space where the Earth was is now different. But space-time is one thing. Minkowski space-time is one four-dimensional structure. So that's not the case. You kind of think of it, if you're in a car and you throw a ball in the air, it doesn't instantly go back unless you're in a convertible, I guess, but it moves with you. A fly in an airplane doesn't know it's traveling at 700 miles an hour. It's moving with that thing. So you can kind of think of space-time in that way. And the reason I bring that up is because when we see these craft appearing and disappearing, if that was an aspect of this phenomenon, if space and time were separate and the Earth was moving as they're traveling in and out of time, you'd expect to see the ship moving very quickly as it's appearing or disappearing, but they don't. They stay in the same place, which indicates that there really isn't this separation of space and time in the way people oftentimes think of it. So yeah, I think many things about the way time passes, the way they're seen appearing and disappearing, the way they sort of fade in and out of existence or tumble and move around in different ways, is probably just an aspect of where they are within our relative time frame in global space-time. We would expect to see those sort of variations in the way that they're observed in these different capacities.